Good evening, everyone. I am Stacy Morris with the Missouri Developmental Disabilities Council. We are very excited to have you all join us tonight. We are going to hear from J.R. Reed. He is a self-advocate who was late diagnosed with autism at 45. Now he is a cognitive behavioral therapist and a certified life coach. So as we go through our program today, if any of you have questions, please feel free to raise your hand in Zoom. And if we are at a natural break, I can pause you, or you can type your question in the chat and I'm happy to read it aloud for you.
Yeah, Stacy, or if I could just take, a couple of breaths between phrases, jump in there with it. All right, are we ready to go?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, well, thank you again for having me back. For those of you who were here last week, thank you for making the effort to come back this week. We're going to look at autism specifically, but neurodivergence, being a part of that, whether we are disabled or we are disabled by our environments. Now, the one thing I do want to make very clear at the beginning is I'm talking about the way we look at ourselves as autistic and neurodivergent people. I am not saying that we are not disabled for reasons of insurance and Medicaid and therapies and all that stuff. Absolutely, that should be classified as a disability. So this is all about how we view ourselves and how we can find ways to thrive when we hit obstacles and some struggles. So a little bit about me and my autism service dog, Ty, who, by the way, loves his gangster purple hoodie. I am an autism and neurodiversity self-advocate, a writer, a speaker, as Stacy said, a cognitive behavioral therapist, and a certified life coach. Now, I was not found at 6 months old in a garbage bag in a dumpster. That would be Ty. Somebody dumped him off, and he was taken to Dogs Nation in El Dorado Springs, which is a rescue that trains dogs to be autism service dogs and dogs for vets with PTSD. Now, a little off the topic, but this is something that they just started doing recently that I think is so cool. I found out that breeders of dogs tend to destroy the blind and the deaf ones because they're of no use, because people really don't want to buy them. She's partnered with one of the breeders to take some of their deaf dogs, and she is now training them to be autism service dogs for nonverbal autistic kids, which I think is just a brilliant idea. And Ty is also an occasional pain in my rear end. That, most dogs are. I also happen to think he's possibly autistic himself, which would make him the only autistic autism service dog in existence. So today's agenda, just basically the overview of what we're going to talk about, how we view ourselves as neurodivergents, how our environment affects us, what our environment includes, and what we can do to create environments where we can thrive. Actually, going back just a minute, talk a little bit more about me and why I do what I do and how I kind of came to do it. I was born in mid-60s Nebraska, moved to California when I was 3, but I had all the classic signs of a baby or a toddler with autism. I had severe food allergies. In fact, there were only 5 foods that I could eat, and they were all white. It was vegetable milk, rice, lamb, and pears, and one other one. I had sleep problems. I had seizures as a youth that eventually got controlled. Beginning in 5th grade, teachers started calling me weird, stupid, and lazy. And they did that not just to my face, but in front of the class. Classmates were maybe a little more colorful than just weird, stupid, and lazy, but it all still hurt, and it made me feel like I was not good enough to be part of them. I graduated high school more than a decade before autism as we know it was being diagnosed. So there was no special education classroom. There were no things for me to do that would help make things better. Accommodations, that's the word I was just looking for. No accommodations. And after 2 years in the Navy, I received a medical discharge. And when my doctors and psychiatrists and psychologists have gone back and looked at all the records, it was very clearly autism that I was struggling with and that I was being discharged for. But again, nobody knew what autism was, so they couldn't put those words down on the medical records. It's just looking at all the symptoms and the things that I had done and the way I'd reacted made them think that. I spent 10 years as a sales and finance manager in auto dealership group where customers lied to me on a daily basis. And my boss called me Forrest Gump every working day for 10 years. And people would ask me why I didn't leave that job. And, I was working at an automobile dealerships in Southern California, and they were kind of rough. And, I thought it was better to go with the devil I know than the devil I don't know. I knew this guy said rude and offensive things, but I also know he didn't mean it in the way, he just thought he was trying to be funny. After that, I decided to work for myself full-time as a freelance writer and not have a boss. And I spent almost 20 years writing for 30 different national magazines, a dozen daily newspapers, scores of websites. And I covered the National Hockey League for 13 seasons. Diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, now autism spectrum disorder, in 2011. And I write, I speak, I train, and I work with the interns at differentbrains.org on advocacy, writing, and speaking. So the DSM code for autism spectrum disorder is 299. And I've written a couple pieces and I've talked about it, that if you're autistic, welcome to Club 299. It's a very exclusive club. Only one in about 43 people get to belong to Club 299. And I did have one person ask me one time where it was located. It is not a physical location. It is more just kind of a state of being in knowing that we're not alone and that we have other people that can relate to us. So today we're looking at how we view ourselves as neurodivergent people and people with autism. We are not broken neurotypicals, but we are perfectly created neurodivergent people. Self-esteem can affect our lives in so many ways, and it's the heart, I think, of all that I've struggled with for most of my life. Now, keep in mind that I didn't have a horrible childhood or a bad childhood, but I heard a lot of negativity. My first memory is about 4 or 5 years old, my mom telling me I wasn't living up to my potential. Well, as I got a little bit older, being very logical and analytical, I started trying to figure out what is the measurement for potential. And there really is none, because everybody has different potential and they have potential in different ways. So self-esteem messes with our heads, and it is a huge contributor to anxiety and depression. I can tell you that self-esteem is not the sole reason for my anxiety and depression, but it does play a big role. When we don't feel good about ourselves, we tend to eat poorly and we're less inclined to exercise. And these can affect us in all sorts of ways, in some ways that we wouldn't even think of. These aspects can cross over. their low self-esteem can stoke anxiety, which in turn can contribute to gastrointestinal issues. So that's the way it affects our physical health. One way that it affects our physical health. I kind of call it the self-esteem circle of life. It starts with our mental health, where we get depressed, anxious, just, feeling very down on ourselves and in a funk. And then that mental health will cross over to our physical health because we just don't feel like exercising. We don't need to get out. We don't want to cook and do things that we know will help us from a physical standpoint. It just, we don't do it. It factors into our daily decisions. We don't feel like doing anything. We don't feel like leaving the house. So we isolate ourselves. I think COVID has helped a little bit with that. People feeling more comfortable isolating. But again, that will go back and affect our mental health, which will affect our physical health. The trip we blew off because we just didn't feel like taking it might have been to the pharmacy. So if we blow off the trip to the pharmacy, that now means that we won't have our medication to take, which in turn kicks back to that whole circle of life. It's going to affect our mental health, and then it's going to affect our physical health. And that's going to factor into our daily decisions. And if the things we're blowing off are big enough, it can alter our lives. What if it's college that we're blowing off because we just don't want to go? Maybe we get that college degree and, have a great career afterwards. Maybe not, but it's the chance that we're giving up. And I'm not saying everybody should go to college, because they absolutely shouldn't. People can go straight into the workforce. I'm a big believer that vocational schools are great, because they teach us how to do physical things and things that our intellectual, logical brains can figure out and can work with. What if we're ditching a business meeting? I mean, that can affect whether you get a promotion, maybe whether you get let go, or whether you're just going to continue to tread water exactly where we are. Maybe it's a necessary doctor's appointment that we're blowing off. If that's a very necessary doctor's appointment because we have something that is ailing us and we're not going to go and figure out how to get help for it, that is a big altering of the course of your life. The possibilities are endless. I mean, I'm sure we could each come up with another 5 or 10 ways that self-esteem can affect our life on a daily basis. And the other thing that most people don't think about is that it affects our relationships with our family, with our friends, with our coworkers, fellow students, sports teammates, people from social groups, and a lot of others that I probably can't think of at the moment. So how do we view ourselves as people with autism or otherwise neurodivergent? If we can't accept ourselves and we can't like ourselves for who we are, how can we expect others to accept and like us? It's kind of like the old saying, if you can't love yourself, why should anybody be able to love you? People fear the unknown. And it's natural for people to fear what they don't understand. But as people on the spectrum, people don't get us. They don't understand who we are. They don't understand how we go about doing things. And they kind of don't want to sometimes. A lot of times they'll think they do, but when they start really getting into it, they don't. And it's a two-way street. So often we hear people that are neurodivergent saying the neurotypicals have to do this, neurotypicals don't do this, neurotypicals, don't appreciate us. Well, it goes both ways. Do we respect the neurotypical people? Are we interested in them? Do we want to get to know them and how they are? Do we want to be able to find a way to integrate with them and make it so it's not us versus them, but really, shouldn't it rather be we or us, just as people, not as neurodivergent people, not as neurotypical people, but people? Because I firmly believe that we will not advance as a society as far as these social aspects go unless we put aside the neurotypical versus neurodivergent and focus on the us and the we and how we can work together to make a society that is more inclusive and better for everyone, regardless of whether they're neurotypical or neurodivergent. There shouldn't be that mentality. We need to find a way to get rid of the us versus them mentality. No one is better than any other. And I firmly believe this. And you will hear people talk about high functioning autism, low functioning autism, people with this, people, those are ways to kind of, describe where somebody is, but it's not the end all be all. I might be able to talk and do these presentations and write, so it would be assumed that I could be higher functioning. But guess what? There are people that don't have this ability to do what I do, but they can do so many other things that I can't do. So how can I, in good conscience, say that what I do is better than what they do? We all have our things that we excel at. We all have our things that we struggle with. Who's to say that anybody's struggle is worse than another's? It's not worse, it's just different. People are aware of autism, neurodivergence, but is it enough to be aware? I'm aware of a lot of things that I don't accept, such as racism, sexism, and country music. And I'm mostly kidding about the country music thing. We need to move past awareness and accept those of us who diverge from the norm. We need to accept everyone, no matter how their brain is wired. We need to get to we. And, we talked about this a little bit last week about aware, accept, and appreciate. And I thought it was just awesome that somebody brought up the fact that April should be not Autism Awareness Month, not Autism Acceptance Month, but rather Autism Appreciation Month. And I got to say, I really, really like that idea, because to be aware is great. We have to first be aware. After we're aware, we can accept. And after we're able to accept, then we can appreciate the fact that we are who we are, then that we do not have to change to fit into society. We are not puzzle pieces that need to be broken down and put into a great neurotypical puzzle. No. And autism does not define us. It's not who we are, but rather a part of who we are. I know that the politically correct people first way is to say with autism or to have autism. And I think that's great. I use it all the time. I use it when I'm addressing people that I don't know who they are or how they want to be addressed. I will address them as with autism or have autism until they tell me otherwise. Personally, I prefer I'm autistic, because to me, to have something means that takes over who I am and how I live my life. I have cancer. I have diabetes. In real life, I don't have either, but I am autistic and I'm okay with that. To me, having autism just seems like it's forcing us to define ourselves by our autism, and that is absolutely not what defines who we are. People have asked, if there was a cure for autism, would you take it? Absolutely not. I would not take it because I'm very happy with who I am. Yeah, I've got days that I struggle and days that, things are hard for me, but all in all, I like who I am and the way I do things. And I wouldn't say anything bad about anybody who decided they didn't want to get the autism cure. But again, just with the realization and the knowledge that autism is nothing to be ashamed of. It's just part of who we are. It's how our brains are wired. And, be proud and happy of who you are. So now let's talk about how our environment affects us. Think about all the things around us that affect what we do and how we do things on a daily and even an hourly basis. We have to first realize this world was not built for us. And keep in mind, when I'm saying us, I'm autistic, so I'm talking about the autistic and neurodivergent community. It just was not built for us. And we have to figure out how to adapt. The example I use most often is a shopping mall. Shopping malls are known to be loud. They are known to be bright. They are known to be crowded, and they are known to have people walking in no discernible traffic patterns. They just all kind of walk where they want, when they want. And I am disabled by that. I feel like I'm struggling and I can't figure out how to get around this. But if I went to the shopping mall on a Tuesday morning at 10, when it wasn't crowded, when the lights may not be so bright, there's not as much sound possibly, and the few people that are there are walking in fairly discernible traffic patterns, I'd still be autistic, but I wouldn't be disabled by going to the shopping mall. And I hope that makes sense. And I just really, really, really want to stress that it is not us that's broken. It is the environment, the world built around us that is broken, and that we need to figure out ways to get around. So we have to answer the question then, how do we adapt? We look around and we figure out what our environment affects us, how our environment affects us, both in positive ways and in negative ways. Then, if you're like me, you take all that information, process it again, and do it a third time just to be safe, and then finally come up with a conclusion. Sometimes that takes a full 3 minutes. Sometimes it takes one to go through it 3 times. And it is frightening sometimes to be in the head of an autistic person. So then, with about 100 scenarios a minute running through my brain, I try to come up with ways to deal with, handle, or cope the situation. And this is something we always can't do on our own. We need somebody to help us figure things out. We need to gather that inner circle in our lives and brainstorm. Because being autistic or neurodivergent isn't something to do alone. we need our family and our friends to be aware, accept, and appreciate, and just all the situations that we're trying to adapt to and get around in our lives. So let's look around at the different ways our autism affects us. Whoop. Whoop. There we go. Wow, that was awesome. So what does our environment include? Well, it actually includes a lot of things. We're very sensory people and need to be in tune with our senses and what we, oh my God. I'm trying to hit notes on my iPad, but I'm actually hitting my mouse. Okay, let's go back. I actually moved from Long Beach, California to rural Missouri to get rid of the sensory overload that was my life in around LA. To those who don't understand autism and neurodivergence, we are picky, fussy people. We really, really like what we like, and we really don't like what we don't like. And, it's funny, talk about sensory and sensory overload and all that. I have a very, very recent example. Yesterday, I went to board meeting training for the Missouri Centers for Independent Living. And in our afternoon session, we had our speaker talking. Well, a few minutes in, somebody went and opened the back door. And immediately upon opening the back door, I was hit with music that was being played, at least 2 or 3 conversations right outside the door, and people trying to build and set up their booths. Well, that was just way too much. I could not try to push that out of my brain and still listen to the speaker. So I got up and shut the door. Well, not 5 minutes later, the person that originally opened the door went back and opened the door, which left me with just another hour and a half of that. And I walked out of that session yesterday and got home and just flopped on my couch because I was just so overwhelmed. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't figure things out. I couldn't even bother to get up and fix dinner because I needed to figure all this other stuff out first. So, it can be all kinds of things that trigger us, and our environment is, as you can see on the board, I mean, it's so many things. It's not just the physical environment, it's the things that come along with that physical environment. So one thing I want to mention before we get into this, I've been asked this before and online quite a few times. Oh God, people want to know how they can change, get their child to get over their textual issues. You can't, and you shouldn't. If you try to, what you're really attempting to do is force that person to be okay with something that their brain is hardwired to resist. They will start to panic, they will become frightened, and they will freak out. And there's really nothing that they can do to stop that reaction until the pressure to change and to be somebody different stops. So let's look at the first one, smell. I do not like the smell of mustard. It makes me gag. If someone asks, would you like mustard on that? My reaction is absolutely not. I don't want to smell the mustard. I don't want to taste the mustard. And if I see a mustard bottle on the counter, I might likely throw it in the trash when no one is looking. Someone asked where the mustard went. Of course, I would deny everything. It needs to be pointed out, though, that depending on what the smell is, it doesn't necessarily have to be food. If someone doesn't like the smell of lemon, it goes beyond lemons and lemonade. There's lemons in dish soap, furniture polish, all other kinds of household products. So if you have an aversion to lemon, you're going to have an aversion to all of those other products. And so you need to find things that are not lemon based. So similar to my disdain for mustard, I have a textural problem with broccoli, cooked broccoli, raw broccoli. But I don't have a taste problem with broccoli. So I'll eat broccoli cheese soup. I'll eat broccoli in a dish as long as it chops small enough so that I don't have to try to put a small tree in my mouth. It's that thing that just my mouth does not like the texture of. So again, it doesn't have to be smell and texture. It can be one or the other, or it very well could be both. Sounds can be a huge trigger for some, and for me too at some point. I don't like high-pitched sounds, and I generally don't like loud sounds. I say generally because every once in a while I crave loud music, and I look at that as a little bit different because I'm controlling the sound of the music and the volume of the music. I can turn it up, I can turn it down. If there's loud music from a concert, or loud music from construction going on around you, but those are things that you can't handle. And again, it's just a way of figuring things out around that. Do you wear noise canceling headphones? If you're able to, maybe you're not able to. Find ways around some of those sounds that really, really bother you. Sometimes when I turn my music up very loud, it sounds weird, but I'm almost trying to blow everything out of my brain and just let it reboot so I can start over, because I got to tell you that is the greatest feeling when you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling stressed, you feel like you have no control over anything and that your environment is just not working for you. To be able to just reboot your brain and start from scratch is such an amazing feeling. And if our environment is too loud, it makes us uncomfortable and unable to take in and process information, and can really, really disorient us. And we as autistic people won't always recognize it right off the bat. We may recognize it and just try to deal with it as best we can. But if you have a person with autism in your life, watch them, see how they react, see their facial expressions, see their, if they tense their body at certain things, and then talk to them and figure out, what you can do to help them. So when we talk about what we see, just to be clear, we're not talking about something that's not safe for work or something that we deem offensive. It's what we take in with our eyes when we're in a given environment. And part of the reason I left California is that, yes, sitting in traffic is horrible, but let's be honest, unless you're in Kansas City or St. Louis, you only have a small taste of LA traffic. Think about being in traffic as far as you can see. The freeway is 5 lanes across in each direction. So 10 total lanes with a center divider. Then you look out your windshield at night, and all you can see are red lights on your side, as far as you can see, and a sea of headlights coming towards you. All that information is so overwhelming for some. And then by the time I would get home, I would be mentally exhausted, which often led to physical fatigue. And then when you add into that a 3-mile stretch of freeway right near my home that had 7 neon billboards in a 3-mile stretch. So you've got headlights, you've got taillights, and you've got flashing neon. That is just a seizure for some people if not being taken care of. Taste can be a weird thing because it often goes along with smell. I don't like the smell of mustard, nor do I like the taste. But a lot of people have a taste issue without having a problem with the smell of that same issue. And the taste issue can range from things that we would think incredible and possibly even ridiculous, like chocolate. I mean, I'm sorry, who does not like chocolate? But it can also be fish. It can also be cauliflower. It can also be certain spice profiles. You don't like things that are too spicy. You don't like things that are too smoky. You don't like certain herbs. You know? So I guess in short, our environment is really everything around us. We can let our environment disable us, or we can find ways to get around and find ways around those disabling issues. We choose for ourselves and for the neurodivergent person in our life. It's not just us. It's our choice on how we do things. So, what can we do? You don't like the environment? You find a new one. I don't like a shopping mall, but I do like Amazon. Now, it's not the same day retail satisfaction, but it's something I'm willing to trade for shopping that I can do with gym shorts and a tank top and slippers on. We all have family and friends for a reason, right? I mean, I would hope so. You know, we as autistic and neurodivergent people are not always the most social people, but I think it's safe to say that a good percentage of us have a comfortable-ish inner circle of people that we trust. Use them. They want to help. They care about us and who we are, and they want to see us get better. And avoid the triggers. I avoid mustard. If I'm eating anything that I think may have mustard on it, I let the person know that I can't have mustard around. Generally, they'll ask if I'm allergic, to which I usually just answer sure, because it's really not worth getting into a big discussion about whether I'm allergic or not, and it's just a textual and sensitivity issue, because they probably wouldn't even understand that anyway. So to kind of sum this up, how we view ourselves is extremely important. There is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of if you have a disability. People who look down on people with disabilities are ignorant. And that's really our job, is to train and educate the ignorant onto how things should be, what life needs to be like, and how they need to treat people. And what this whole dog and pony show was about is the idea that having autism or being neurodivergent isn't about what we won't accomplish. It's celebrating who we are and what we can do. And after a lifetime of being told I won't or I can't, I prefer to tell people to step aside so I can show them how it's done, because chances are there's a lot of things I can do better, and there's a lot of things I can do worse. But you know what? You celebrate the good and you find ways around the bad. So at this point, why don't we try to take some questions, please? I think I talked a little too fast with this. I don't even know what time it is. Oh, no, I was good.
I think that was perfect. We're right at
no, I was right
minutes.
on.
That leaves time for questions and the survey. And I don't see any hands up right now. Does anyone want to put anything in the chat? Sarah Albertson mentioned how she likes, with the Autism Awareness Month, changing it to Appreciation Month. Awareness is just another form of doing nothing.
Right. Well, and you know
Um,
what? I will say
we
this. I can't remember who the person was last week that brought that up, but this is not my idea. So I'm just saying I don't want to take credit for something that somebody else came up with.
just
I'll expand
passing
on it.
the good ideas on.
I'll
Uh,
expand on it, but I'm not going to take credit for it.
and Sarah also said that, we should look at changing the environment, not the person.
No, and that's what this whole thing was about. Changing the environment or finding ways around it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with going to your local shopping mall and saying, hey, there's a lot of people in this area that deal with this, and it would really help if you could set aside one day or a half a day a week that there was no music, the lights were dim, and we could come in and feel more comfortable. Because so many people think of advocacy as stuff on the state level or doing things like this, presentations, writing, speaking. But advocacy really starts with just something small, like going to your teachers or to your kids' school and saying, hey, they're struggling with this. Is there any way we could tweak this a little bit? I mean, that's advocacy.
And I don't see any other questions, JR. So if you want to continue on, you may. Anything else,
Um,
any closing remarks or anything before I put out the Survey Monkey?
well, yeah, I'll just say that, this will go different for every person because we all have different lives. We all live in different places, different socioeconomic, different family backgrounds and everything. But I think I would really take a lot of what we talked about today and figure out how you can apply it best to your family. Because I am not here to tell anybody what to do. I'm here to provide information that I want you to take home and think about it and see if any or all of it can apply to you and your family. Come on, somebody's going to come up with some question.
Skylar did note that Skylar wasn't comfortable that the quote, if you don't love yourself, how can you expect anyone else to love you? Skylar has an autistic friend who Skylar loves very dearly, who can't love herself because she has severe depression. So
Okay, well,
Skylar just kind of felt that saying this feels like blaming the person for not loving themselves instead of looking at what is in their environments, making it hard for them to love
right.
themselves.
Well,
So
Skylar, to be clear, what I said was it's similar to the example of if you don't love yourself, you can't love another. What I was talking about is self-esteem. If we can't feel good about ourselves, then it's not impossible, but it's difficult, for other people to, feel good about us. And it's not always the case. But again, I was just using that. If you can't love yourself, how can you expect someone to love you? Because that's just kind of a popular phrase. But yeah, I mean, we do have to push and we do care about people and love people, and we have to do push and help them to get better on their own. But it's just kind of a general concept.
Hannah asked, what might you recommend in situations where we don't have much control over the environment and finding another one isn't an immediate option, such as in the workplace?
Well, I totally agree with that. I mean, everything is not within our control. And there are some things that we can't do, but in the workplace, look at what your struggles are or what you may need accommodations with. And I mean, have you tried talking to your boss yet? Your manager, your supervisor? I mean, they can be little things like if there's so much noise where you are and you're not on the phone, just allowing them allowing you to wear noise canceling headphones. They can be very small little things. But then ultimately you have to decide, is this the job I want if I'm dealing with all of this? And again, that I'm not telling you to quit the job or anything, but I'm just saying these are things you need to consider, in your personal situation. If you think the job is worth it and you can make it work, great. If you think you need to go find something else, then that may be an option too.
Great. And, and Hannah works with the ARC as support staff. So she was just trying to,
Which are
she was trying to ask that question out loud, but I did include in the chat askjan.org. It's a really great resource. It's free, the Job Accommodation Network. And they even have like letters that are already written in a template. We just have to put your name in that might say, I need an accommodation for lighting, or
right.
How to deal with bringing your service dog to work. So I really encourage everyone to check out that Job Accommodation Network. And I mean, they will even go in and help train employers. And I think
Yes.
that you all might find that sometimes people just didn't know that the environment was offensive, and then they will most likely go out of their way to try to make that a better situation for everyone. So
Right.
don't be afraid to ask. Just know that some people might not know any better and don't know that it's an uncomfortable environment for you. And then when you let them know and brainstorm some ways on how to fix that, you might be surprised with how much support you get.
Yeah. And, the other thing is, before you go talk to somebody about things like that, maybe do a little research, find a couple of articles that talk about how it can improve the environment and how easy it is. Because, Stacey, do you know what the average accommodation is, cost?
Less than $100 or something. They're
Yeah,
usually
it's between
just
$200 and
changing some
$300,
things
between $200
around.
and $300. Yeah, so it's very cheap. It's not like you're asking them to go spend $10,000 on something. You may just be asking them to move you into another corner of the office where the fluorescent lights aren't as bright, or moving you into a place that doesn't have as much sound and noise or foot traffic as other places. That most accommodations, especially for people with neurodivergent conditions, are very, very minimal.
Great. Good discussion. All right. Well, hey, I'm going to put, JR, any closing remarks? I know you have your email, your website, and your blog up
Yeah.
on the page.
If anybody comes up with questions after the fact, or questions that they may have now that they don't want to put up, to the public to look at, feel free to use my email. There is a contact page on the website. So I'm free and happy to answer questions or help in any way I can.
Thank you so much for that, JR. And I did put in the chat a survey monkey, and that is so we can continue to do these great things and have great speakers like JR come and present to you all. So I really hope you'll take, it should just be 2 or 3 minutes, just asking some demographic information and then how you felt about the presentation. So I really hope you will take the time, just click on that Survey Monkey link, and that will really help us out a lot so we can continue to do this.
Yeah, and please be honest, because I want to see if there's something that maybe I'm missing, a component I'm missing, or I'm addressing something too fast, or I'm spending too much time on something. I want to know that so I can improve these and tailor them. Just don't use 4-letter words.
And I'm going to go ahead and put JR's website in the chat as well. That way you all can just click on that if you would like. After you take the survey, then you can check out JR's website as well as the Job Accommodation Network. And if you have finished both of those, you are free to log off. Other than that, please just check out the chat to get the Job Accommodation Network, the Survey Monkey to let us know how you liked the presentation today. And we also have JR's website up there, and all of his contact information and blog are on that website as well.
You're welcome, John.